Did you know that Viking warriors grew vegetables in their gardens that could put our modern superfoods to shame? These legendary Norse settlers cultivated 16 incredible, forgotten crops that were far more nutritious and climate resilient than anything we grow today, yet modern agriculture has almost completely abandoned them all. Let's start with the vegetable that proves Vikings understood the value of patience better than any modern gardener. Skirit was the Viking equivalent of a retirement fund, except instead of money, it paid out in sweet, fibrous roots that tasted better than anything you could buy at the store. The Vikings called this plant krumrot or gerla, and it was the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it crop. While modern gardeners baby their vegetables with constant watering, perfect soil, and climate-controlled greenhouses, Skirit just quietly did its thing underground. You planted it once, and these sweet white roots multiplied year after year without any help from you. It was like having a savings account that grew vegetables instead of collecting interest. But here is what made Skirit truly special: the taste. These slim white roots were naturally sweeter than carrots or parsnips, so delicious that medieval nobility demanded them in their palace gardens. Archaeological evidence shows that while direct Viking-era finds are limited, early medieval sources confirm this plant was prized across northern Europe. The roots were rich in starch and sugars, with pinnate green leaves and long taproots that could reach deep into the soil for nutrients. Vikings ate Skirit raw, or cooked, often sweetened with honey, to create what was essentially medieval candy. The roots could be boiled, roasted, or turned into sweet treats that made harsh winter meals bearable. What made it particularly valuable was its reliability during brutal Nordic winters, when other crops failed completely. By the 18th century, we had abandoned this cold, hardy champion for potatoes, which needed perfect conditions and constant attention. It is like trading a reliable pickup truck that starts every morning for a sports car that breaks down every winter. Skirit was labor-intensive to harvest and had lower yields than modern crops, but it provided something far more valuable: guaranteed food security in an unpredictable climate. Next up is a plant so valuable that medieval Icelanders made it illegal to steal from your neighbor's garden. Angelica, known to the Vikings as kvan, was not just any herb. This towering plant, with its umbrella-like flower clusters, was basically the Swiss Army knife of the medieval garden. Archaeological sites in Norse towns like Hedeby are loaded with Angelica seeds and pollen, proving that Vikings cultivated entire kvangardar, Angelica gardens. A 13th century Icelandic law specifically prohibited stealing Angelica from another person's garden, which tells you exactly how prized this plant was. Imagine calling the police today because someone swiped your parsley. That is how important Angelica was to Viking communities. This tall, umbelliferous herb provided protection from something that sailors died from for centuries: scurvy. Almost every part of the plant was useful. Vikings used the young stems and roots as vegetables, the seeds and leaves as sweet seasonings with an aniseed-like flavor, and the whole plant as medicine. Icelanders still make tea from Angelica seeds today and use the leaves to season fish, maintaining a tradition that stretches back over 1,000 years. Medieval sources even regarded Angelica as a plague remedy, though we know now that its real value was its high vitamin C content. This made it incredibly valuable for long sea voyages when fresh vegetables were impossible to store. Vikings had solved the problem of scurvy centuries before the British Navy figured out that citrus fruits could prevent it. The plant is extremely cold tolerant and thrived in Norse gardens where other herbs would freeze. As trade routes brought new spices and flavoring agents to Europe, Angelica's cultivation faded. Today it grows wild in many areas, or survives only in heritage gardens, a living reminder of Viking agricultural wisdom. Now, let's talk about a plant that modern gardeners spend small fortunes trying to eliminate, while Vikings deliberately cultivated it for food. Ground elder might be the most misunderstood vegetable in history. Today we call it bishop's weed or hanafot in Norwegian, and it appears on every list of invasive garden pests that need to be destroyed immediately. But archaeological inventories from Viking Age sites tell a different story. This perennial, with compound leaves and edible shoots, was actually grown as a garden plant. In Bergen, Norway, it was called tiskerkål, or German cabbage, and it has been used as a pot herb for over 1,000 years. Ground elder is basically nature's way of offering you free food, and modern gardeners are too stubborn to accept the gift. This plant spreads faster than gossip in a small town, requires zero maintenance, and produces vitamin-rich greens all season long. Vikings ate the young leaves raw or cooked them like spinach. The plant is fast-growing, frost-hardy, and packed with vitamins A and C. Medieval physicians valued ground elder as an herb against gout, which is where its Latin name podagraria comes from. Vikings recognized its value as a reliable perennial green that would feed families when other vegetables were scarce. The plant requires no cultivation beyond containing its spread, making it perfect for communities that needed food security without constant gardening work. Modern agriculture has declared war on ground elder, with chemical herbicides labeling this nutritious plant as a nuisance. Meanwhile, we pay premium prices for organic spinach and kale at grocery stores. Ground elder is the ultimate revenge plant. We tried to kill it, but it just keeps coming back, offering us free nutrition while we are too proud to take the hint. Here is where things get interesting. Celery, but not the kind we have today. Vikings were growing the original wild celery, and archaeological finds from Danish sites like Hedeby and Viborg prove they were cultivating it over 1,000 years ago. This was not the watery, flavorless celery stalks we know today. This was celery with actual nutrition and flavor. This aromatic plant from the Apiaceae family is native to European marshes, and Vikings mainly grew it for the nutrient-dense seeds and leaves, not the stalks. The seeds were used to flavor broths and cakes, providing intense seasoning that modern bouillon cubes try to imitate but never match. The leaves and root collar went into stews as both flavoring and medicine. Medieval sources describe celery as both a seasoning and a tonic, understanding that it provided more than just flavor. This ancient variety was incredibly cold-hardy and drought-resistant, thriving in Nordic marshes where modern vegetables would die. Vikings had homegrown flavoring that could survive anything nature threw at it. What we did was replace this hardy survivor with modern celery that is mostly water and needs perfect greenhouse conditions to grow. The old varieties, including leaf celery and celeriac, fell from favor as true stalk celery became popular. Today, most cooks do not even know these original varieties exist, except for celeriac in specialty gardens. It is like trading a wolf for a poodle, technically the same species, but completely different capabilities. Vikings had reliable, flavorful plants that enhanced their food while providing essential nutrients. We settled for vegetables that look pretty but provide little nutrition and need constant care. Chicory might look like a simple roadside weed with its pale blue flowers, but charred chicory seeds at Norse archaeological sites tell a completely different story. This bitter-tasting plant from the aster family was deliberately cultivated by Vikings who understood something we have forgotten. Bitter flavors are actually good for you. The young leaves were eaten as a bitter salad green or pot herb, providing valuable nutrients during the lean months of winter and early spring. Vikings also roasted the roots into a coffee-like brew, a practice that remained common across Europe for centuries. The plant served double duty as both food and medicine, used to aid digestion in communities that understood the connection between bitter foods and digestive health. Modern chemical analysis has revealed what Vikings knew instinctively. Chicory is packed with inulin fiber and antioxidants that health experts now recognize as superfoods. But here is the amazing part. Chicory thrives on poor soil and tolerates heat and drought better than most vegetables. It is basically the honey badger of the plant world, growing in conditions that would kill pampered modern crops. We abandoned this climate-resilient superfood because it tasted too interesting for modern palates that prefer bland vegetables. Chicory lost ground to milder leafy vegetables and commercial coffee, becoming relegated to roadside weeds that most people ignore. Today, it is seldom grown intentionally, despite being more nutritious and climate-resistant than the vegetables we struggle to grow in perfect conditions. Sometimes, being tough and nutritious does not pay off in the popularity contest of modern agriculture. We chose convenience and mild flavors over nutrition and resilience, losing a plant that could actually improve our health while growing itself. Garden Orash is proof that Vikings had more colorful and nutritious diets than most modern families. Archaeological evidence from the 10th and 11th century Scandinavian sites shows they were growing this leafy green in varieties that have completely disappeared from modern gardens. This hardy plant from the goosefoot family originated in Eastern Europe but naturalized perfectly in Norway, where Vikings recognized its value for marginal growing conditions. Orash is basically spinach's more interesting and resilient cousin, coming in red, green, and purple varieties that would make any modern salad Instagram-worthy. What made Orash truly Viking-worthy was its ability to mature quickly and provide early spring greens when vitamin-rich foods were desperately scarce. Vikings could harvest fresh, colorful leaves, while the rest of Europe was still eating stored grain and preserved meat. The plant tolerates salty and dry soil, making it perfect for coastal settlements where other vegetables would struggle. The leaves were boiled or eaten raw like spinach, but with higher levels of calcium and iron than most modern greens provide. Medieval gardeners valued Orash specifically because it could grow in marginal conditions where other vegetables failed, providing reliable nutrition from problem soils. By modern times, Orash had fallen out of use as spinach and kale became dominant. In Scandinavia, it is now rare in gardens, despite being perfectly adapted to northern climates. We replaced this colorful, hardy green with vegetables that need perfect soil and constant care. It is like choosing black and white television when you could have color, technically functional, but missing all the good stuff. Sweet Sicily was so special in medieval Bergen that locals called it the King of Denmark. This anise-scented herb was the Vikings' answer to sugar, providing natural sweetness centuries before refined sugar was available in Northern Europe. Every part of this plant, from the umbellifer family, provided gentle sweetness with a distinctive licorice flavor. Vikings used the leaves and stems to sweeten soups and stews, the seeds as flavoring agents, and the roots as a sweet seasoning that made harsh winter meals more palatable. It was prized enough that monastery gardens specifically cultivated Sweet Sicily, and Norwegian confectioners made candy called Kongen of Denmark, flavored with this remarkable plant. What made Sweet Sicily perfect for Viking settlements was its tolerance for shade and ability to naturalize in woodland clearings. Many Norse communities were tucked into forest areas where full sun crops would not thrive, but Sweet Sicily flourished in partial shade. The plant is rich in essential oils and nutrients, providing both flavor and medicinal benefits in one package. Archaeological evidence from western Norway shows Sweet Sicily was commonly grown in medieval gardens, valued both for its sweetening properties and its role in folk medicine. The plant could reduce dependence on precious honey stores while adding complex flavors to simple foods. With the advent of imported sugar and artificial flavorings, Sweet Sicily gradually disappeared from European gardens. It survived mainly in old monastery sites and traditional herb gardens, but most modern cooks have never experienced its unique flavor. We abandoned this natural sweetener for processed alternatives that provide empty calories instead of nutrients and medicinal compounds. Horseradish was basically the Viking equivalent of a nuclear-powered spice rack. Medieval accounts and archaeological evidence show it was valued both as food and medicine, providing preservation capabilities that could extend the life of stored meats through long winters. The hot white root was grated as a condiment for stews and sauces, providing intense flavor that could wake up your taste buds and clear your sinuses permanently. Vikings even ate the young leaves in salads, though few modern people realize horseradish leaves are edible. The root contained high levels of vitamin C and antimicrobial compounds, making it essentially nature's antibiotic that happened to taste like concentrated fire. What made horseradish truly Viking-worthy was its incredible hardiness. This plant survives in growing zones 2 through 9, spreads by root division, and once established, provides a lifetime supply of preservative and medicine. Vikings could plant it once and have generations of flavor and food preservation capability. Medieval doctors prescribed horseradish tea for purifying blood and calming stomach problems, understanding its medicinal properties long before modern science identified the compounds responsible for its effects. The plant's antimicrobial properties made it valuable for treating colds and digestive ailments in communities without access to modern medicine. Most modern gardeners buy jarred horseradish instead of growing this virtually maintenance-free plant. It is like buying bottled water when you have a perfectly good well in your backyard. Vikings had figured out how to grow their own preservatives, flavor enhancers, and medicines all in one indestructible plant. Burdock might be the most unfairly maligned plant in gardening history. Those sticky burrs that grab onto your clothes and annoy hikers are actually protecting one of the most nutritious root vegetables Vikings ever cultivated. Historical records confirm that medieval gardens specifically grew burdock for its massive edible roots. The Japanese still understand what we have forgotten. Burdock root, which they call gobo, is a culinary delicacy with an earthy, complex flavor. It is packed with inulin and trace minerals that provide significant nutritional benefits. Vikings also ate the young leaf stalks and flowering shoots like asparagus, making use of multiple parts of the plant. This biennial plant, with very large leaves, grows easily on waste ground and poor soil, essentially turning marginal land into food production. It is the ultimate permaculture plant, improving soil structure while producing nutritious food, and accomplishing all of this without any help from gardeners. The fleshy taproot can grow quite large and has a delicate, slightly sweet flavor when properly prepared. Vikings understood that beneath the plant's aggressive exterior was a valuable food source that could thrive where other crops failed. The root is rich in fiber and provides nutrients that were especially valuable during winter months, when fresh vegetables were scarce. We declared war on burdock because of its burrs, essentially banning a nutritious food source because it was too clingy. Modern dating apps could learn something from burdock's attachment strategies, but meanwhile, we are missing out on a hardy, nutritious vegetable that requires no special care and improves the soil while it grows. Lamb's quarters is basically quinoa's European cousin, and Viking settlement sites are loaded with its seeds, proving this was a staple food rather than just a backup during hard times. This fast-growing annual from the goosefoot family was one of the original superfoods, except it grew like a weed and required zero cultivation. Vikings ate the young shoots and leaves like spinach, harvesting them throughout the growing season for fresh greens. The protein-rich seeds were ground into meal, providing high-quality nutrition that rivals modern quinoa. Recent studies have shown that lamb's quarters contains more protein than cabbage, more iron than spinach, and more calcium than kale. Archaeological evidence indicates this plant was regularly consumed across Viking territories, with seeds found in food waste pits and cooking areas. The plant is exceptionally easy to grow, self-seeding and producing abundant greens and seeds without any care from gardeners. It is basically a self-maintaining food system that volunteers to feed families year after year. What makes this especially interesting is that lamb's quarters is closely related to quinoa, which we now import from South America at premium prices. Meanwhile, this nutritious native plant grows wild across North America and Europe, dismissed as a common weed by people who do not recognize its value. Modern agriculture has declared lamb's quarters a pest species, spraying herbicides to eliminate what Vikings considered a valuable food source. We pay high prices for imported superfoods while calling this nutritional powerhouse a weed and trying to kill it. Good King Henry was the Vikings' version of a three-course meal growing in one plant. This perennial, from the goosefoot family, was called poor man's asparagus, but it was actually richer in nutrients than the expensive vegetables we buy today. The plant provided asparagus-like shoots in spring that were blanched and eaten as a delicacy. Through summer, the succulent leaves were used like spinach in soups and stews. Even the flower buds were edible when boiled, giving Viking families multiple harvests from a single plant. Medieval sources describe it as being prized through the Middle Ages, before virtually disappearing from cultivation by the 20th century. What made Good King Henry perfect for Viking settlements was that it returned every year without replanting and tolerated poor soil conditions. It was the ultimate lazy gardener's dream: plant it once and harvest for decades. The plant is high in vitamins A and C and easy to propagate from seed or root division. Recent studies have revealed that Good King Henry contains 3 times more omega-3 fatty acids than iceberg lettuce and significant amounts of iron and vitamin C. Vikings were getting superior nutrition from a plant that required virtually no maintenance once established. We abandoned this reliable perennial for annual vegetables that need replanting every year, constant care, and perfect growing conditions. It is like canceling a subscription service that delivers exactly what you need and choosing to manually reorder the same thing every month at higher prices. Pignut proves that Vikings knew exactly where to find the hidden treasures in their landscape. This plant, from the carrot family, hides sweet, crisp tubers underground that taste like a cross between potatoes and hazelnuts. Place names across Norway still reflect Viking familiarity with yardnot, or earth nuts. The small tubers, only 6 to 8 millimeters across, were eaten raw or boiled like tiny potatoes. 18th century accounts note that Norwegian children were still digging up these sweet tubers as snacks, and during World War I, they were even used as almond substitutes in baking. This tells us that the knowledge of Pignut persisted in Scandinavian culture long after the Viking Age ended. Archaeological evidence suggests Vikings valued Pignut as an emergency food source that grew wild in forest edges and shady areas where other root vegetables would not thrive. The tubers are nutritionally rich in fiber and starch, providing concentrated energy that was especially valuable during lean periods. What made Pignut particularly valuable was its ability to thrive in marginal conditions that would challenge other crops. Vikings could harvest these nuts from from woodland areas without dedicating prime agricultural land to their cultivation. The plant essentially provided free food from spaces that were not suitable for other vegetables. We abandoned this genuine Nordic root vegetable for mass-produced potatoes and imported nuts. It is like having a secret stash of natural candy hidden in your backyard, but choosing to buy processed snacks from the convenience store instead. Before Vikings had access to lemons, they had common sorrel, and the linguistic evidence proves how important this plant was to Norse cuisine. The fact that the Sami people borrowed their word for sorrel from Old Norse shows. This tart perennial was a crucial part of Viking food culture. The lemony leaves were added to soups and sauces, exactly like we use lemon juice today, providing the sour flavoring that made bland winter foods edible and appetizing. Vikings understood that sour flavors not only improved taste, but also provided crucial vitamin C that prevented scurvy and other nutritional deficiencies. Sorrel is one of the first greens to emerge in spring, arriving exactly when fresh vitamins were desperately needed after long winters of preserved foods. The plant regrows quickly after cutting, providing a continuous supply of tangy seasoning throughout the growing season. It is basically a renewable lemon tree that thrives in northern climates where citrus cannot survive. The high vitamin C content made sorrel especially valuable for seafaring communities that needed protection against scurvy during long voyages. Vikings had solved this nutritional challenge centuries before other maritime cultures figured out the connection between fresh vegetables and sailor health. As trade routes brought imported citrus fruits to northern Europe, sorrel gradually lost its culinary prominence. Many modern cooks are completely unfamiliar with this native sour green, despite its superior nutrition and perfect adaptation to northern growing conditions. We replaced this reliable native plant with imported citrus that cannot survive our winters and requires long supply chains to reach our tables. Stinging nettle was so important to Vikings that they buried bags of nettle seeds with their dead, proving this plant was valued enough to take into the afterlife. The Oseberg burial, one of the most famous Viking archaeological sites, included nettle seeds among the grave goods. When cooked or dried, nettles lose their sting and become one of the most nutritious greens on the planet. They are loaded with iron, calcium, and vitamins, essentially providing a multivitamin supplement that grows wild everywhere. Vikings used them like spinach for soups and made medicinal teas that provided both nutrition and healing compounds. What made nettle perfect for Viking communities was its incredible reliability and hardiness. This plant is extremely easy to grow, actually harder to stop from growing than to cultivate. It provides early spring greens when nothing else is available and continues producing through the growing season. The plant survives harsh winters that kill other vegetables, returning vigorously each spring. Medieval physicians recognized nettle's cooling properties and used it for skin irritations, while nettle tea was prescribed for fever and inflammation. Vikings understood both the nutritional and medicinal value of this abundant plant that required no cultivation or special care. Modern people spend money on vitamin supplements, while this superfood grows wild in backyards, vacant lots, and forest edges. Nettles are basically nature's way of offering free medicine and nutrition, but most people are too afraid of a minor sting to accept the gift. Lovage was the Vikings' secret weapon for transforming bland food into something amazing. This tall, perennial herb provided celery-like flavoring that was 10 times more potent than anything available today. The plant was likely brought north by medieval monks and quickly became a staple in Viking-era gardens. Vikings used the leaves and young stems as seasoning in soups, stews, and broths, understanding that the flavor was so intense that one sprig could enhance an entire pot of food. Medieval sources describe lovage as both a culinary herb and a digestive aid, recognizing its medicinal properties alongside its flavoring capabilities. This remarkable plant is extremely hardy and multi-purpose, growing over 6 feet tall and living for decades while providing massive amounts of seasoning from very little garden space. The deep roots actually mine nutrients from deep in the soil, improving garden fertility while producing food. It is the rare plant that makes your garden better while feeding your family. Monastery records from the 13th century describe lovage as a remedy for troubles of the stomach and kidney complaints, showing that medieval herbalists understood its medicinal applications. A single lovage plant could provide a family with seasoning and medicine for 20 years or more. We replaced this flavor powerhouse with commercial bouillon cubes full of artificial ingredients and preservatives. It is like trading a professional chef for processed convenience foods. Technically, both provide flavor, but the quality difference is enormous. Vikings had figured out how to grow their own gourmet seasonings that also improved their health. Finally, we come to Opium Poppy. And before you worry, we are talking about the seeds, not the other compounds. Viking-age sites, like Viborg, have yielded poppy seeds in latrine deposits, proving Vikings grew and consumed these tiny nutritional powerhouses that are completely non-narcotic and incredibly healthy. Vikings used the tiny black seeds in breads and pressed them for oil, much like we use other oil seeds today. The seeds are rich in healthy fats, calcium, and fiber, providing essential nutrients that were especially valuable during winter months when other protein sources were limited. While opium might have been used medicinally by monks for pain relief, Vikings were primarily interested in the seeds as food. Archaeological evidence shows that poppy cultivation was deliberate and organized, not accidental. The seeds found in waste deposits indicate regular consumption rather than occasional use, suggesting that poppies were a standard part of the Viking diet rather than a luxury item. Heritage varieties of opium poppy could still be grown today as annual oilseed crops, providing local seed oil and flavoring that rivals imported alternatives. The seeds are essentially a complete protein source that grows as an attractive annual flower, combining nutrition with beauty in the garden. We have made this plant so taboo that most people do not even realize the seeds are edible and nutritious. Meanwhile, we import similar seeds from other countries, while ignoring this local option that our ancestors successfully cultivated for both food and oil production. So there you have it, 16 vegetables that fed some of history's most successful explorers. These forgotten plants are not just historical curiosities, they are solutions to problems we are rediscovering today. Give a nod to your inner Viking, pillage that like button, and subscribe for more fascinating journeys into Midgard living.